Welcome everyone. Welcome to Talks at Google. My name is Anurag Wadehra with Google Cloud. It's a unique occasion and a privilege for me to host this event for Google. I'll start with a very simple story. I grew up in Delhi in a household where both my grandparents were refugees from Pakistan. So partition was not dinner time topic. In fact, it was a lived reality. Every day, we talked about an uncle who didn't quite make it, an aunt who was lost somewhere in the journey, or somebody who lost their fortune overnight. These were the tales we grew up with in our household. Yet, when we went to school, there was nary a mention of any of these realities. What we read in textbooks were the grand history, the leaders like Nehru, Jinnah, Gandhi, Mountbatten, who saved us or savaged us, depending upon the side you were on, and who delivered us independence. All that was completely contrary to the actual lived experiences of 10 million people or more who were displaced by partition. Fortunately, a lot has changed in the last 20 years, and I'm here to introduce two institutions that have been doing phenomenal work. First one is 1947 Partition Archive that has been collecting the stories and testimonies of the survivors of partition. And the second institution is Enacte Arts that has been working on some interesting and creative ways to bring many of these stories to life. So let's begin with the first set of guests for the 1947 archive. Let's roll with a video.
Very traumatized. I was standing there not knowing what's happening. The gunman was only about 10 feet away, sort of, he shot at me a few times, every time he missed. So I started running.
I feel like I'm a bottled plant. So the bottle can be put here. I have no roots.
And I remember my mother made me sit down, tear all the bed sheets. And then I knew why, because all these wounded people who were coming in, she had converted one place for clearing their wounds.
Invite the guests. Please join three of you. Let me do quick introductions to the unique guests from 1947 Partition Archive. I have over here Gunita Singh Bhalla, who is currently the executive director of 1947 Partition Archive. She was born in Delhi and immigrated with her parents to US when she was 10. And during a trip to Hiroshima in 2008, she was deeply moved by the oral histories of those who survived the atomic bombing in Japan, and was inspired to begin recording this oral histories of partition witnesses. She's a condensed matter physicist by profession, and was last seen working on quantum interfaces at Berkeley, Lawrence Berkeley lab. In 2013, she began volunteering full-time for the archive. Today, with nearly 5,000 oral histories of witnesses from 12 countries have been recorded, making it the largest oral history effort for South Asian subcontinent. The other two guests are
Thank you.
Other two guests are citizen historians, and we'll learn more about that. Reena Kapoor has been a founding donor to 47 Archive since the year of its inception. She became involved as a citizen historian after she heard Gunita talk about it at the end of a play on partition in 2011. Being a child of partition refugees herself, Reena finds her bliss in interviewing elders who were witnesses and survivors to this event. Professionally, she makes a living as a product management executive and lives in Bay Area. Farhana Afroz is from Bangladesh and a software test engineer working in Bay Area. She learned about the 47 archive from a flyer at a local grocery store that read 1947 Partition Archive, Share, Collect, and Donate. Her journey with archive started as a citizen historian in 2011. She has collected over 100 stories personally so far. She has recorded stories in US as well as in Bangladesh. And she's also a founding donor and a board member of the archive. Welcome to all three of you.
Thank
Let
you.
Let me start with you, Gunita. So tell us about how this all started and where did the idea come from and how did it take this form?
Yeah, so I come from a partition-affected family. My grandparents migrated from what's now Lahore in Pakistan to Amritsar in Punjab. So I had grown up with those stories. I come from an army family, very familiar with the India-Pakistan tensions. And one of the things that happened when I moved to the US when I was 10, went to high school here, it wasn't even mentioned in my textbooks. And I knew it was a big deal because I'd heard my grandparents, hi refugee, I'd heard my grandparents talk about it, and they had talked about the millions of people that were affected. And so there was that discrepancy. When I talked about it to my teacher, she said, oh, well, it must not have been a big deal because it's not mentioned in our textbooks. So I knew something needed to be done way back in high school. I just never knew what. And the spark came, the aha moment was in Japan in 2008. I was in Hiroshima and I saw the Peace Memorial and I saw the oral history archives, and I found them to be extremely powerful. And I realized that those testimonies gave the bombing of Hiroshima legitimacy and importance. And that's kind of how it was documented. That's what inspired the documentation. That's what we needed to do. For
Just the slides you want to show to anchor us on some of these incidents?
So yeah, if you imagine for a second, if Hiroshima had not been documented and the Holocaust had not been documented, we'd be in a very, very different world today. For instance, the UNHCR was inspired from the work done with the Holocaust survivors, and the nuclear non-proliferation movements came from the work done in Hiroshima. Here's partition by the numbers. 14.5 million people approximately, the latest numbers, migrated in 46 through 48. About 20,000 if you look at the next 10 years. That's about 1% of the world's population at that time. So 1 in 100 people in the world migrated, became
20
refugees.
million total.
Yeah. And if you extrapolate to today, that's going to be like 70 million. It's incredible. So number of people affected, about 14% of the world's population, if you look at the entire South Asian subcontinent. People don't think if everything was affected everywhere. It was, there was impacts of partition, but from our oral histories, we know that every corner of South Asia saw some sort of influx or, refugees coming in or out, basically. We don't even know how many people died during partition. I already told you the Japan story, so we'll skip this slide. But ultimately, what we needed to do was record as many oral histories as fast as possible, and we needed to reach, a diaspora of people all over the world. And so we, leveraged modern technology at the time in 2009, 2010, and we started to crowdsource oral histories by teaching people everywhere how to record stories. And so we democratized the recording of South Asia's history in that way. And so if you go to our website, you'll see this Google Maps. So thanks, guys, for whoever works on Google Maps. You can check out some of the stories. You can click on, say, a city. You'll see stories from that city pop up on the right. And then as you go further, you'll see that if you click on one of the stories, you can watch a little snippet of the video. The full videos actually are being stored at Stanford University libraries, and you can access them there slowly. And you can see an excerpt of the story. Goal is to record 10,000 oral histories, and together all of us who are volunteering to do this work are going to make that happen with your support. So far, we're at 5,000. We've recorded 5,000 oral histories, which is already immense because it makes it one of the largest oral history projects coming out of South Asia and one of the largest video-based projects in the world. So each of those stories is about 2 hours. You can imagine how much video that is. About 550 people have helped record them from over 300 cities around the world in 12 countries, 22 languages, and 750,000 people are following these stories on social media. So the stories can also be found in a number of libraries across South Asia pretty soon. That's something we're working on with Tata Trusts. So I'm going to go ahead.
So let me turn the next question to Reena. Reena, what's your connection to partition, and why did you become a citizen historian?
Yeah, so as it has been said by a couple of you, my family was also affected greatly by partition. Both my parents were children when the families were forced to flee from what was at the time undivided India but is now Pakistan. And my mother's family in particular, my grandmother was a young widow at the time, it just so happened, and she pretty much fled with 4 children and absolutely nothing on her. And I grew up hearing all these stories and how many people were lost and family members that lost their lives, lost their livelihoods, and any assets that they owned. My grandmother was sort of a legend in the family also because she was one of those people who got on a train, one of those legendary trains which basically showed up on either side, on the India side and also on the Pakistan side, filled with dead bodies because people were massacred. And she traveled those trains twice, once to bring her children to the India side and then the second time to go back all the way to Peshawar because they were from that northwest frontier, which even today is a troubled area, to bring some assets so that she could raise her children. And she actually managed to do that successfully, pretending to be dead, a dead body on those trains. So, for good reason, she was considered a legend. And I grew up hearing these stories. I also grew up hearing about a lot of animosity towards the other side. As has been said before, there was not much in our textbooks except for the glorification of our political leaders. And the story of partition that I heard from textbooks, and there was very little by way of really accurate history books at the time, was very divorced from the reality of people on the ground. And when I grew up, I started to read various accounts, and if any of you are interested in partition, an excellent book by Urvashi Butalia, which is The Other Side of Silence, where she was amongst the first people to actually record oral histories, and her book is based on that. And when I read that, I realized that what had happened to people on the ground was very different than what had been sold to the people as the causality of this event. And then the second thing that happened was when I was in Delhi, I was in IIT Delhi in first year, and it was 1984, and something very similar happened at the time when Indira Gandhi was assassinated, the Prime Minister, and local people attacked Sikhs, and willy-nilly mobs appeared, and there were murders and rapes, and a lot of what I had read about the realities of partition seemed to be repeated. And these incidents and the history of my family really troubled me. So in 2011, as Anurag mentioned, I went to watch this play, Jine Lahore Nahi Vekhya Jamya Nahi, which in Punjabi means if you haven't seen Lahore, you haven't yet been born, which is an ode to the glories of the old Lahore. And at the end of that play is about partition and about an old lady who refuses to leave her ancestral home after partition, which was again a story I had heard many times. And Gunita, the founder, spoke about her vision for the archive, and I was very impressed, and I thought this is exactly the kind of work I want to volunteer for. So since I have so much time from my day job and being a wife and mother, I said, why not put it all to good use and become a citizen historian? And I've been doing that, and it has been my bliss.
So what has been some of your key insights, if you can close off with that?
So obviously there have been great learning from our elders about what really happened and where did these mobs come from. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, who were these people who chose to kill and murder and rape and mutilate each other? After all, Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs had lived together for centuries. So what went so radically wrong? And there are many, many answers to that. But I think the scariest of the answers really is that it was people like you and me who chose to pick up arms, chose to actually listen to our very misguided leaders, and chose to find differences amongst us when there was so much in common. I think if Indians meet people from Pakistan and vice versa, I think and also Bangladesh, as my fellow citizen historian, and I've interviewed people from Bengal and I've learned that we find we have more in common than we do with the rest of the world, yet we find it somehow okay to be ready to kill for the sake of our identity. So that has been, the greatest thing for me is how watchful we need to be about such forces and how easy it is for ordinary people to turn to violence in the name of their tribe. So that has been great. The other insight for me is how remarkable that generation was. And Raviji, that's why I'm such a great admirer of you as well, is partition happened. These were people who had lived in their ancestral villages and cities and homes, had never even traveled, had very little idea of what was India. They thought they were living in India. So what was Pakistan and what was the new India? And yet they somehow found their way to a new life and just went about surviving and building their new lives and providing for their children and got on with it. And it speaks to the resilience and the remarkable nature of the people at the time. But I think what the government ended up doing was taking that and allowing history to be swept under the rug. And I think that is something that we should not allow to do, because this is a history that has repeated itself and will continue to repeat itself. And as Gunita mentioned, the animosity between India and Pakistan. Here are two nations that still can't get past it. They're sitting there with nuclear missiles pointed at each other. And we ought to do what we can, even if it is by bringing forth accounts of the people who have suffered, to inform the rest of us that just like the violence is within our power, so is the peace.
Thank you. Very well said. So I want to turn to Farhana. Farhana, you have a unique perspective, particularly the work you've been doing with Bengal. And Bengal often gets less coverage when it comes to the topic of partition. It has its unique history related to partition. Can you share with us some salient points about that? Bangladesh.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction in the beginning. Anurag said that I am from Bangladesh. But when people ask me, where are you from? I actually tell them my grandmother is from India. My mother was born in Pakistan, and I was born in Bangladesh. And that's all in the same land, Bengal. And even though none of my family members had to migrate, and we did not go through the sufferings that your families did, but our family has seen partition, and there is a profound effect, hence the identity has changed over the years. When I first saw that flyer about 1947 in that grocery store, the first thing that went through my mind was, what took them so long? And later I found out it's not them, it's actually her. So I got involved with the Partition Archive. I got trained as a citizen historian, and I started recording stories in the Bay Area primarily. Then I went to other cities in the United States, and then I went to Bangladesh. Actually, in 2012, I traveled to Bangladesh for a month to collect stories. When you hear the Bengal side of the partition, most people think the Hindus of East Pakistan migrated to Kolkata, and the Muslims of Kolkata migrated to Bangladesh, and that's about it. But that is definitely a major portion of the partition of the Bengal side, but there is another side of the story that are about the forgotten people. a lot of people migrated from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, Meghalaya, and Assam in 1947. They migrated to the nearest part of Pakistan, which was East Pakistan and Bangladesh today. So what happened is these people, Urdu-speaking people, moved to East Pakistan, and it was Pakistan and it was good. But in 24 years, in 1971, East Pakistan became Bangladesh. During the liberation war of Bangladesh, the Urdu-speaking community, which was about 170,000 people at that time, sided with the Pakistani army because they wanted to keep one big Pakistan. As it became Bangladesh, now these people are kind of outsiders. They wanted to go to Pakistan. They want to migrate to West Pakistan. Pakistan, which is a new country, West Pakistan I mean, was not ready to take such a big, refugees, 170,000 people. So they were left in Bangladesh, in the land of Bengal, and the Geneva Convention put them in different refugee camps in 1972 so that they are not attacked and they are safe. When I went to Bangladesh in 2012, I found out there are 167 refugee camps in Bangladesh, and those Urdu-speaking people are still living in those camps. Nobody has come for them. Nobody is willing to take them. And since they sided with Pakistan and they identified themselves as Pakistanis, Bangladesh government was not taking them either. So these were refugees, and they were living in refugee camps for 40 plus years. They were given an 8x10 room in 1972. So maybe the family was husband and wife and a child, but by the time in 2012, 42 years have passed, their family has grown, and they're still living in that 8x10 room. And nobody is, talking about them. They're not citizens of Pakistan or Bangladesh. They're basically stateless. So this has been going on for a very long time, and a lot of people, especially the Urdu-speaking people community, they basically want their rights. So in 2008, fortunately, the Bangladesh government ruled that people who were born after 1971, that means in Bangladesh, the children who were born in Bangladesh will be granted the citizenship of Bangladesh. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is one family that I interviewed. The lady who is second from right, her name is Mrs. Khairunisa. She walked from Bihar in 1947 because there was a huge riot in Bihar. We all heard about it. The lady to her right is her daughter. She was 16 days old. She was holding her daughter and walked all the way from Bihar to East Pakistan. And they settled. And then she had other children, her two other daughters. But by the time 1971 happened, now they are stateless. So this is actually a room in Geneva camp in Dhaka where they still live. This whole family lives there. Fortunately, their grandson, who is not pictured here, who is 22 years old, was granted the citizenship of Bangladesh because he was born after 72. So this was like the highlight of my trip to Bangladesh. I did interview a lot of people, 60 stories almost, but these stories of the refugee camps really stayed with me because these are the people who are forgotten. Slowly they're getting their rights, but they are really stateless people. To this day, Mrs. Khairunisa doesn't have a citizenship.
Very powerful, very sad story. Thank you for sharing that. Just in closing, can you please share with us some insights you have from the work you've been doing after 70 years of partition? If you could summarize that for us.
Yeah, sure. Can I show a couple of slides? So these are just anecdotes from stories. So these stories, one of the cool things is not only do you learn about partition, but you learn about pre-partition culture, cultures that are now becoming obsolete. So here's a gentleman we had interviewed, actually right here in Rodeo in the Bay Area. He was 107 at the time. He's not alive any longer. But he told me this one story that really stood out. So we think of chai as like a very staple South Asian drink. But he told me about a time in the 1920s when they used to boycott chai because they were boycotting the East India Company that they felt was trying to popularize tea in an area where people didn't drink tea in a lot of northern India. And he claimed that they used to go around spiking people's milk. And, I don't know how true that is, but that was the rumor of the time. And so he, to this day, did not drink tea. So I thought that was fascinating. But of course, in terms of partition, he did walk for miles and miles, all the way from northwest frontier region over to what's now India. Another impact of partition was art and culture. So here's a photograph of a music family, music gharana. So a lot of music gharanas were disrupted when musicians had to up and leave behind a lot of their art. And for instance, there's a popular story of there's certain musical families that used to perform in the Golden Temple in Punjab, and they now live in Pakistan, and they're not able to perform any longer because they live on the other side of the border. So fascinating histories like that of disruption. We're also, and by accident, recording endangered languages. So there's a language called Torwali, and there's a number of stories now in the archive because a volunteer from the Northwest Frontier region in Swat who speaks that language decided to record stories of his elders in that language, and there's not many other recordings, if any, in that language. Another thing that really stands out when you record oral histories is the significance of the kingdoms pre-partition, which today have been mostly swept under the rug. So there was British India, which is the pink region that you see on this map, and then the darker region consists of about 560 kingdoms. Okay. And so, yeah, that's about
Thank you so much. I want to close off with one short video that sums up the observations, if I may.
Yes, I was named Kirti. My father used to call me Popo. You see, we are Kashmiri Pandits. My father believed in all religions. My sister, who was older to me, got married by Guru Granth Sahib. We used to celebrate Muharram, we used to celebrate Eid. Then every year, my father and my two brothers, they went to the Gurdwara, and Guru Granth Sahib was brought nange pair, sir pe rakh ke ghar pe aata tha. We used to have Guru Granth Sahib Pura, and it used to. We always went for Ram Leela. My childhood, I remember all three religions being celebrated in my house. And I was 11 and a half, and my sister, elder sister, who was not married, is around 18. We left Pakistan. So we had a very well-known shop there, Ask O Museum. Ask-O-Museum. And the owner of that was a Muslim. My father left the keys with him like that. And he said, everything is yours. You look after it, I'm coming back. And he was so genuine and he was so faithful. He packed all our stuff and sent it through our uncle who was in army.
So I want to thank you for three of you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the second project, which is equally interesting. A different mood, different turn. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Enacte Arts, which is a South Asian theater company. And I would like to invite the founder and artistic director of Enacte Arts on stage. She's Vinita Sood Bilani. Please welcome her. As I transition out, I was impressed by one statement in your mission, which I thought was very interesting, which said, the borders that separate us are political, but the ties that bind us are cultural. I thought that summed up your mission quite well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anurag, and a very special thank you to Anurag for arranging this, this talk at Google. We are in such august company. So if the archive is the repository of stories, then Enacte and Noorani Dance, who is our co-conspirator in this project, we are the tellers of stories. We tell stories through dance, through music. I hope you noticed the music that was playing in the beginning when you came in, and when you sat down, that was Raginder Singh Momi, who is the music composer of the play The Parting that I'm going to talk about. I have here several actors, directors who are part of Enacte. What does Enacte do? We tell stories. We create contemporary theatrical storytelling projects that start conversations about our history, about our culture, about our religions, and essentially about our place as South Asians in global society today. We are the people who, because we are in America, we are an immigrant community in America, we create a platform that allows the next generation to embrace who they are and where they came from, and give them the tools to create a new culture that is an amalgamation of the culture that they came from and the land that they live in now. So that's Enacte Arts. We do theatrical projects. Noorani Dance has the same mission, but they do it through dance. The founder of Noorani Dance is in Pakistan right now. She is born and brought up in the Bay Area. Her name is Farah Yasmin Sheikh. And she is, as we speak, performing a dance piece on the story on the life of Noor Jahan in Lahore, where Noor Jahan was buried. So we not only create stories here, we take them back to where they belong. There's a few things about us as a South Asian population in the diaspora, out of our own South Asian roots. The South Asians in the Bay Area, we tend to follow the three gods of education. And the three gods of education are doctor, lawyer, engineer. Some of us have a kick in the step. However, following the three gods of education, doctor, lawyer, engineer, means that we have become a model minority in countries like the US. We behave ourselves, we earn a fair amount of money, we look good on paper. What we don't stop to think about is that the children that are born to these three gods are not necessarily using the same filter that was applied to the people who came here. They're a normal population. So there are as many dancers, actors, artists, playwrights amongst this population as there are in any other normal population. And who is serving that need? Well, that is us. So what do we do? In the environment that we live in, there are three kinds of storytellers that we have. The professional storytellers. There is Kunal in the background here. There he is, Kunal. He's a professional actor. He is making his way. He is an integral part of Enacte. He actually works at Enacte. He's our marketing manager. He's a professional actor, and talk to him about his story. That's one kind of storyteller. There is a second kind of storyteller that is a wannabe, somebody who wants to be in the arts but needs the training. Then there is a third kind of performer, actor, theater person who we call the second career person. That's the Googlers in the room who, in their copious amounts of free time, go and do community theater somewhere. So Enacte is one of the only theater companies in the US that actually caters to all three kinds of talents. We have Aspire Productions for community theaters, we have hybrid productions, and we have professional productions. Our professional productions tend to be large. We collaborate with a lot of people, especially musicians and dancers, because in the South Asian tradition of storytelling, it's almost impossible to tell a story without the dance and the music associated with the flavor of that story. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about The Parting, which is a play which tells the story of the partition. Gunita and all the citizen historians have done such an incredible job of capturing these stories. It is now our job to bring these stories to where all of you are. And as they mentioned, the stories, the historic accuracy of that period does not come from the political and the party line briefs that were given to us. The British cannot write that story. Jinnah and Nehru cannot write that story. That story is written by the people who experienced, who stepped across that line that was made in such a hurry and found themselves in their own country to be refugees. That's the story we want to tell. But today, I am going to tell you a story that sort of encapsulates everything that we're trying to do. And I want to bring on stage a very special person, Mr. Ravi Chopra. Raviji is very special to us. He has been an actor with us for a very long time. I am not going to give an introduction to Raviji. We're just going to jump straight into his story, and you're going to know why as we talk. So Raviji, tell me, when and where were you born?
Vinita, I was born in a very famous place known all over the world, Lahore, in the year 1938.
1938. So you were about 8 and a half, almost 9 when partition happened.
Yeah.
So where were you living at that time?
I was living with my grandmother and my younger brother in a village known as Kasowal. Mm-hmm. It was then a small village. Today it may be a big town.
And when in 1947, what were you doing there in the village?
Yeah, so I used to go to a madrasa, the school, and learn Urdu from a Maulvi. Maulvi means teacher. And use the normal life. My father was the in charge police station Kasowal. He got his orders for promotion to the next rank, that is sub-inspector, and he had to go to Lalpur. So he left us under the care of one local merchant, Tikkam Chand, to look after us in his absence, and that he would come back in a month and a half or so, and he would take us to India. My mother and sister, they had already gone to India. So that was the kind of scenario at that time.
Okay. So what made you leave Kasowal?
As I mentioned, we were leading just normal life, no worries. We were small kids, going to school, coming back, playing with the friends. And then one fine morning, the Muharram of the police station, that's number 2 of police station, he came to Tikkam Chand and warned him that his house is going to be attacked that night. And so he should leave as soon as possible. He took it seriously, and he collected all his valuables, cash, jewelry, important documents, and many of them even they tried to hide it under the clothing all over the body. And when the darkness came, we went to the Kasowal railway station. You know, it was a village, only passenger trains would stop there. So this Tikkam Chand, I think very rightly thought that if we catch the passenger train, we're going to stop at every station, which is it was not safe, very risky. So he went the opposite direction to a town, junction town, Khanewal. From there we got the mail train so that we don't have to stop. We only stop at the junction station and not at every village station.
So when you were going in the opposite direction, you must have passed Kasowal village.
Yes. We passed through that Kasowal village, and Tikkam Chand was sitting right next to the window, and I distinctly remember him shouting, "Sab jal raha hai, hamara ghar jal raha hai, ye jal raha hai." And we also, like kids, started to die. We saw fire almost everywhere in our village where we were staying. And he was literally in tears when he reached the next junction station, Raiwind, from where we were to catch the train to India, Firozpur.
So what happened on Raiwind station then?
Raiwind, you see, this place, when we were waiting for the train, because trains had no timings, there was no timetable sheet that train will come. Yesterday, train will come today. So that kind of scenario was existing. So we were just waiting for the train. And then suddenly the firing started. And all the people on the platform, we started running to find the cover. And in the process, a bullet hit me on my cough and it started bleeding. And then my dadi, very courageous lady with a good presence of mind, she tore off her dhotis, sterilized with her urine, and made it a bandage on my wound. And we were hiding behind the pillar.
And did you make it onto the train?
Yes, we did, but when the train came, as you see on the pictures here, it was fully packed. People sitting on the top of the roof, even on the couplings of the trains. People sitting in front of the engine, and the compartments were totally packed. And then people on the platform, you can just imagine how there's no place to get in and still trying to find place and all that confusion. But we were fortunate in the sense that Tikam Chand had known the assistant station master of Raiwind. And he paid him a lot of cash and money because he had a first-class compartment reserved to him, his family, traveling to Kasur. Kasur was a border town. Next was the Firozpur. So it was a border town on Pakistan, India. And that was the only way we could survive. So he paid whatever he wanted, and so that we could be part of his family.
And so you got onto the train with
Yes,
him?
assistant station master's family, wife and I think 2 small kids, Tikam Chand's family, myself, my younger brother, my dadi. So we all went mucked into the first-class compartment. And
what do you remember of that journey? What do you remember? Were there stops and between stops?
Yes. From Raiwind to Kasur, there were, if I remember, 2 or 3 stops, main stops where the train would stop. And at every stop, there would be mobs of people coming when the train stopped. And the shouting, "Hai koi Sikh da bacha, hai koi Sikh da bacha." Usually they used to find, because from India side, the Sikhs, the rumor was that Sikhs were massacring the Muslim people. And they used to shout on, try to find if any Sikh family, somebody there. And our station master, he would just open the window slightly, say, "No, I am the station master. I am traveling here with my family." And we used to hide ourselves in the bathroom and lock ourselves. You see, earlier, the first-class compartment had the bathroom attached. Even till very recently, we had the bathroom attached. And that is what every station saved us, because he would only show his family, his wife and children, and he had a beard, and still remember that small beard and kind face, because of him that we lived through.
So you were saved by a kind Muslim. You were very fortunate.
Yes, absolutely. You can say that. Jako rakhe saiyan mar sake na koi. And maybe I had to survive because one day I had to serve my country in the rank of General of the Indian Army.
General of the Indian Army.
Yes,
All
that is
right.
a different story.
Okay. So we'll come back to this story. What did you see between stops? Did you look out of the window? Did you have the courage to look out of the window?
As we were approaching the platform, you see, or you were traveling to look out the window, you would see young girls running and jumping into the wells. The young people with a murderous eyes chasing them, and they are trying to save their honor, no option but to kill themselves, burn themselves. And the fire all over the field. I mean, there were terrible scenes. We were kids, we were not sure what all is happening. It's only in retrospect that they told us. And so this was the kind, even on the platform, when the train reached, you could see the bodies decorated along the railway track, literally lined up. So that was the kind of human behavior at that time.
And what was happening inside the compartment? Were you huddled in?
I mean, as I mentioned that as far as we were concerned, thanks to this assistant station master, that he would every time, he would save us, because we hide ourselves in the bathroom, lock ourselves in, only he will be visible. And even the mob will come, peep through, ensure that there's nobody else, and go.
So when you reached Kasur, that was the last stop before the border.
Yes.
What happened then?
Yes. Kasur, when we reached Kasur, so this assistant station master, he opened the window and made sure that everything is okay. Then he told his family to get off the train. And as he was going to say bye-bye to us, then Tikam Chand with folded hands told him, please don't leave us now. Let the train move. And let the train move, and then only you please leave. And he did that. I distinctly remember the moving train. He jumped up almost towards the end of the platform and then waved at us. That kind of picture I still have in my mind.
What a kind man. And so you crossed the border and you arrived at...
Yes, and I owe my life to two Muslim Pakistani gentlemen. One was that Muharram, who saved us. Here is another assistant station master. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today.
Well, we honor those two people who saved your life. We're very happy you are here today. Tell us what happened when you crossed the border and arrived at Firozpur.
That was when we reached Firozpur, we came out of the compartment. Believe me, there was blood splattered on the bogies, on the railway compartment, the train we were traveling. Mutilated bodies, hands hanging from the windows. It was terrible. So we were, as far as I remember, we were the only family survived the massacre. There was nobody else.
Incredible.
And only good thing was there were sick families who took care of us, giving us milk, fruit, first medical aid, and that kind of scenario was there. And then from there we boarded the train to go to Delhi.
So you went to Delhi because you had family in Delhi, or?
No, yeah, because that was the only place to go.
So what happened when you arrived at Delhi?
Delhi railway station, when we arrived, it was jam-packed. Platform was full of people. There was hardly place to even to move. So my grandmother holding my son, I am limping with my leg hurt. My younger brother had a fever, so he's also tagging along. And then that bheed bhadakka, my brother got lost.
Oh my goodness.
And I tell you, my grandmother shouting, hey, bhai, dekha hai, gora ya munda, pure wal, brown hairs. Have you seen it? I was also shouting, Devi, Devi, because I mean, just imagine having suffered all the ordeal, coming back at the destination, and then again losing my brother, whom I loved so much. I was in tears, and then didn't know what to do. So there, luckily, I found him.
Sorry. You found him.
Yes, sitting, crying. I hugged him. Then
Sorry. So from Delhi station, where did you go?
we had nowhere to go because my dadi didn't only remember that my Masi's name is Leelavati and she stays somewhere in Chandni Chowk. And that my master has got a luggage shop somewhere in Chandni Chowk. That's the only thing we knew. So we tagged along with Tikam Chand to the refugee camp in Karol Bagh. Those of who have seen Karol Bagh of today, there was nothing Ajmal Khan Road or that shopping center. It was a total barren land. That is where we had the refugee camp, and that is where we stayed. And my dadi and Tikam Chand would go in the morning to Chandni Chowk and find out from every luggage shop, do you know Leelavati? Do you know Leelavati? She's my dadi.
Amazing woman.
Yeah. So, so then one morning, the gentleman said, yes, it's the name of my wife, Leelavati. And then he said, is his younger sister's Kanta? My mother's name is Kanta. He said, yes. And then my dadi was literally in tears and introduced herself and told her that I have brought his children here. And the same evening, my Mausi and my cousin sister came to the refugee camp and took us in a Tonga to her home. And same day, I think they called the tailor master Darzi. And we were in rags, stinking clothes, so we changed and we got the new clothes. And then, Vanita, I ask you a question. What would be your feeling as a mother when you know the children you had taken as a dead have arrived safely? All mothers, just put yourself in that situation. How did my mother take that news? That is, 2 firstborn who were taken as dead has arrived.
Incredible.
I mean, this is kind of stories for many
I can't
mothers.
even begin to imagine how a mother must feel.
So what Gunita and what he told you that this is so many lakhs and lakhs were massacred, millions were disturbed, and affected, badly affected. This kind of, and thanks to 1947 archive, that these things are being compiled. And I was one of the first one. Gunita came and recorded my story.
Well, you're a first in many ways, Raviji. But in your whole story, you haven't told us about your father. What happened to him?
My father, as mentioned, he had gone to Lalpur. So from there, he checked up with the wireless, so that we have left Kosovo. But he didn't know what happened after that. His influence with the police and the help of army, he flew to Delhi. But earlier, I don't know whether we are putting that in our parting play. Everybody used to be glued to the radio station to know about their kith and kins, whether they are alive, where are they, because even from the camp's announcement used to be there. Radio stations all the time, 24 hours, who had looking for the son, somebody looking for the mother, somebody looking for the father. So 24 hours radio station broadcast would be there. So that is where my father learned that we have reached India, but we didn't know where he is. So it is only when he came to Delhi and that we got united as a family.
Incredible.
And we all met in a place, Jagadri, where my grandfather was the manager of a sugar mills.
Jagadri
sugar mills, yes.
So my father also moved from Lahore to Amritsar, and my grandfather was also the manager of the sugar mill in Jagadri. That's just, we were destined to meet no matter what. We're all part of family. So thank you so much for sharing that story. The reason we bring up this story is because Raviji, as he mentioned, was one of the first people interviewed by the archive. His story is one of the earliest recorded in the archive. He had an entire career in the army, retired as a major general, and then he started a second career here in the Bay Area. Tell us about that one.
You see, when I came to the United States, nobody will take me as a general. So I chose my next best passion. Even while I was in service, I used to write plays, small skits, not the plays, skits, act in plays. And so when I grew up in rank, then my priorities changed because I had other things to take care of. But the passion remained. So when I came here, this was my second best career, which I thought I would join. I joined dancing groups. I joined the theater group with Natak, with you, and with one of you.
So I just want to tell everybody that in the play that we are doing about the partition, which is made up of true life accounts of people like Raviji, he is actually playing the role of a very kind and benevolent Muslim Pakistani.
That is.
So
I'm playing in that role. I'm reliving my partition life in this role, because here also I'm performing the role of a Muslim gentleman. There, the Muslims saved my life as Hindus. Here, as a Muslim, I am saving Hindu's life. And one of them is...
Thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you very much.
So it was an honor to have Raviji on stage with us and sharing his story. I just wanted to bring him on stage because I wanted to show what the power is of a story told in real time between people and making that connect. And these are the stories that we are telling in the play about the parting. There is, music and dance and a lot of audiovisual, very high-tech elements in there, but fundamentally, these are the stories that make up the real history of the partition. And so I want to now introduce you to the person who is the writer and the director of the play, and let him talk about the play himself. My great honor to welcome on stage Salil Singh. I am not going to introduce Salil. His words are going to be so mesmerizing that you're going to look him up on Google as soon as you get out of here. So take it away, Salil.
Thank you, Vinita. Several years ago, as I became familiar with the work of the archive, I began to work on a script for a play that would dramatize stories embedded in the experience of partition. Stories of lives deeply, irreversibly redirected, torn as a consequence of lines drawn on a map. I realized quickly several important things. First, it's an immense subject matter played out on a vast canvas of a subcontinent, and that a terrible silence has engulfed these stories across the decades. A silence that has perpetuated through a combination of regret, guilt, shame, loss, trauma, incomprehensible suffering, destruction, and death. And finally, that there is a brief window of time in which it is still possible to gather people on a stage and in an audience as they have a living memory of this event. And it's our chance to speak across generations and nations, religions and divisions. So this was my mandate. I began to write a play that would unlock some of these stories. The play is called The Parting, and I'll briefly talk to you about how it begins. It begins in a deserted wasteland in which characters are sleeping all across the expanse of the stage. Through it walk a young girl and her grandmother. The young girl dares to ask a question which will awaken the ghosts of these stories, buried in the fog of history. And her question is, I want to know what happened that year. All across this landscape, whispers begin to surface. At first, they are warnings. They don't wish to be awakened. These are ghosts who are very happy living under cover. 1947, 1947. Why remember? Let sleeping dogs lie, or you will hear them howling through the night. Who cares to know? Who dares to name it? Too much time has gone by. No one can even remember. We have tried so hard to forget. Some things are better left forgotten. 1947. If you do, it'll be too much, too little, too late. It's too far, it's too long. Too many have suffered, too many have died. Too many that lived who would rather have died. 1947. If you try to remember, you will rake the coals and fan the flames. But the girl asks, if you don't remember, how will I know who I am? And all the whispers stop at that moment. This is the key that unlocks the rest of the play. So this is what I had for a shape, a structure to a play. It was waiting to meet a visionary producer, Vinita, a theater company, Enacte, which was ready to take a very huge risk and put this out there, a dance theater company, Noorani Dance, under Farah Yasmin Sheikh, who were inspired enough to join forces and in some ways give me this amazing, in some ways humbling and ennobling experience of spearheading this project. The production is in full swing, and I invite you all to come see it when it does open in the Bay Area. What I'd like to do at this point, though, is to bring back on stage Anurag, You have known him as your gracious host for this morning. He's also my story development collaborator who has helped me understand what stories to tell, what kinds of narratives to weave back into this play that would dare to paint an image of a moment in time which is grand enough, satisfying enough, honest enough, brutal enough to do justice to this moment in history. Anurag, will you speak a word about how you came to select the kinds of stories that have become a part of the play?
Yes, thank you. I have been passionate about the subject in the last 20 years, have been collecting stories and curating stories and also writing some short stories on the matter, since it's a subject close to my heart. And when I was invited to participate in this project, I realized that through the support of Vanita and Enact, as well as direction, what was possible was to cherry pick some of the stories that could shape the telling of such a massive incident. And we deliberately chose stories from a variety of sources. Some of these are obviously imaginative stories created by me and others over the years based on lived experience of millions of people. Some of these are actually ripped from the headlines of that era. For example, a story which is a centerpiece of the play is star-crossed lovers of Zainab and Bhuta Singh. Bhuta Singh was a Sikh farmer who gave shelter to a Muslim woman, and who, after many years of living together, she was forcibly sent back to Pakistan, and how he crossed the boundaries of religion and state to reunite with her. That's a true story, was popular at its time, very contested. Another example is of a story that was curated from historical archives, story of a British Army limb fitter, Ghulam Ali, who was actually shuttling between Indian and Pakistan armies for almost a decade or more, and not being able to reconcile whether he was a Pakistani or an Indian. And that was a true story straight from a research that was done by many scholars, as an example. Yet another story around how a brother is trying to protect the honor of his sister, and the price he has to pay for doing that, right? So and the kind of questions he faces that. That's an imagined story from experiences of many people. And finally, stories of Hindu and Muslim neighbors that we kind of reconstructed from historical narratives that talk about how could neighbors who were living together, Hindus and Muslims, lose trust in each other suddenly, and what would it take to bring the trust back? Was it even possible? So these were some of the stories that we kind of compiled together. None of these were selected with the intention of horror or shock, although many of them are horrifying and shocking. We selected them from a wide variety to represent the range of possible experiences. Ultimately, the idea was to ask the question that Salil had put in the beginning: why did this happen? And how do we make sense of it? So that was really the intention of these stories. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. So you can expect a poetic rendering of these stories when you come to see The Parting, something that combines poetry, dance, theater, acting, words, and beautiful music. I would like to invite at this point two young ladies who've been waiting very patiently, Mira and Athena. They are part of Noorani Dance. Let me clarify, what they're about to share with you as a little performance piece, it's not from the production of The Parting. It is their way of connecting to the stories and the material and the events around 1947, and they've been working on it as a dance interpretive piece.
The train to Lahore was very difficult. The train stopped at multiple locations, and at one point, we looked out the broken windows to see the train surrounded by people with weapons in their hands, ready to slaughter us, the passengers. The train driver managed to negotiate with the mob and found a way for the train and the passengers to reach its destination safely. When we arrived, we saw bloody train cars and learned that some of our dearest friends had been killed on the way. We arrived at the crowded station, carrying whatever we managed to hold in our arms from our home. I held my 6-year-old daughter's hand with such a tight grasp. She was complaining. We pushed through the crowds. Just as I stepped onto the train, I felt my arm being pulled back by the force of the crowd. I tried to hold on with all my strength, but the grip was loosening. Our sweaty palms not helping, nor the herd of people around me. The train was starting to move, even though not all were on the train, and even though my daughter was not on the train. I never saw her again. I was 11 years old when partition was announced. While we were playing near the railway station, we were told that a nearby train was being attacked by a mob. We rushed to the tragic scene and saw men, women, and children being looted and murdered. All we could hear were screams, and all we saw were piles of dead bodies. I remember seeing a baby who was still latched to its dead mother. Finally, it was our turn to board the train. We were stuffed in like cotton bales in a gunny sack. The doors of the train were barricaded so no one could get out. The 3-day journey was filled with tribulations. The train was nearly massacred just before the end of the journey. When we had almost reached our destination, a group of insurgents broke into the train through one of the barricaded doors. Their swords were covered in a soft cloth. And they said, if the train going to India comes unharmed, we will not harm anyone. Luckily, that train was not harmed. When we reached our destination and we got off the train, instead of running for food and water, people knelt on the ground and offered prayers of gratitude that we had made it safely.
Thank you, Meera, Athena. Meera, this morning would not be complete without inviting you, as a young person in the Bay Area, to speak for a moment about what does it mean to encounter these stories, to work with your art in reconnecting with them.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miran. I'm 16 years old, and I go to a high school in Cupertino. I am one of the performing members of Noorani Dance, founded and directed by my Kathak teacher, Farah Yasmin Sheikh. I'm fortunate to be one of the dancers featured in the parting. As the dance and music director of the parting, Farah wanted to include other styles of classical dance, such as Bharatanatyam and Bengali and Punjabi folk dances. These multiple dance forms represent the diversity of those that were affected by the 1947 partition. With the actors, we will be weaving different aspects of real-life events of the partition through dance, music, and a theatrical script. We hope to represent the intensity and emotion of what took place during this historic time in South Asia. The partition has always been puzzling. How could a man-made line on a map displace over 14 million people and result in the death of almost 2 million? South Asians of my generation often don't understand the magnitude of this tragedy, so taking part in this project has special meaning to each of us. Through this experience, we have become more empathetic to the survivors of the partition, and we are also more aware of the history of tension between India and Pakistan and the forces of division in the world today. We hope our generation can learn from this and change the course of history towards peace. Thank you, and I hope to see you all at the party.
Thank you very much for all of you. In closing, I want to thank the panelists for sharing their work. I want to thank 1947 Archive team, Gunita, Reena, and Farhana. And special thanks to Enacte Arts team as well, Vanita, as well as special thanks to Ravi Ji for sharing his experiences. If any of you are interested in sharing your time and money, please join us by donating at Google Give directly in the back or online for the website. And thank you for Amit Pandey and the production team of Talks at Google for supporting this event. Thank you. Bye-bye.